Cool. So
Right.
Edwin's going to record it. It's only going to be the intro and his room. So if you don't want to be recorded, just put no, and then I won't put you in Edwin's room. If you don't care, then just put yes. Don't put anything. And this will go on his YouTube channel, not the Stoa's YouTube channel. And if you're a facilitator, also put EFC by your name, like Edwin and I have, so I know what rooms to put you in. And yeah, I'll tell you what the question is in a moment, but I'll take an Edwin to do a overview of what this is and talk about the training that's going to happen in November.
Okay, thanks, Peter. So welcome to the Empathy Circle or the Empathy Cafe. And this practice is, this is a mediation, the Memetic Mediators. And I think the Empathy Circle is one of the most effective mediation processes that I know. It's based on active listening, which is used extensively in the healing practices for anyone having emotional issues, or just having someone there to listen to you is very supportive, as well as if you're kind of wanting to head off conflicts before they happen. And if you're in a conflict, you can bring it into the empathy circle. So I wanted to, last time I had shown a video, 6-minute how-to video, but I think enough people have seen it that I won't show it again, but just give a short introduction of the process. So there is a link there to the videos. There's a 9-minute how-to, a 6-minute how-to, and a 24 for the how to take part in the process. And then there's a link to a PDF. It's just very short, 1 page. You can just click on that, open it up, and as a PDF, and have that as a reference. And also there's a link there to an upcoming training that we're doing. It's a 4-session training. It's going to be starting November 3rd. It's every Tuesday for 4 weeks and goes for 2.5 hours per session. And it's how to take part in an empathy circle. So how to facilitate one, and I see a lot of people have taken the course are here too. And so you can click through to that, and that one in November is filling up quite quickly. Just have a few spots left, and Peter's going to be taking it. Yay, Peter! So glad about that. And I see Karen too is taking it. Hi, Karen. So quickly, how to take part in the empathy circle. I won't go into the details, too much of the details, because we've shown that in the 2 previous circles. And I think enough people know the process. So in this process, we have 4 to maybe 5 participants. There'll be a facilitator in each circle, which is someone just that has some experience with the process. There's other roles. There's a speaker and a listener role and silent listener roles. And the speaker is going to talk on the topic that's at hand, which Peter's going to share in a minute, or whatever's alive for you. So you can talk about anything that is on your mind in the moment. And you'll select who you're going to speak to. You speak on the topic, you say an idea or two, and then you pause. And the listener is going to reflect back their understanding of what you said in their own words, or they can paraphrase, summarize what you said, and you check as a speaker, did they get what you said? And if they did, then you continue speaking. If they didn't, you can say it again. You really want to check and make sure that you feel heard and understood to your satisfaction. And then we're going to have 5-minute turns, so you can speak for the full 5 minutes. You get speak, pause, get a reflection, speak, get a reflection. And then after the 5 minutes is up, the facilitator will hold up a sign or something like that to indicate that your time is up. And at that point, you want to wrap it up. And then if the listener becomes the new speaker, they select who they're going to speak to. And then you just kind of do the process again. And then we're going to go, how are we going till a quarter till? Is that, Peter? We'll do.
Yeah, it's 2 hours in total, so yeah, we'll do that quarter till is good.
A quarter till. Okay, so then after the time is up, we'll have a quarter till. We'll come back to the full group for a short debrief. So a few tips as the speaker. You do want to pause often to give the listener a chance to reflect back their understanding. If you're the listener, you're only wanting to reflect back what you understood the person has said. You don't want to ask questions or add your own comments. You can ask the speaker to pause just so you can reflect back what what they said. Sometimes the speaker will say a lot, then you're just going to forget it or kind of get lost in what they said. So you can ask them to pause and reflect back. And so we're going to do 5-minute turns. And what was the topic you'd wanted?
Hold on one moment.
I have it here if you want me to post it. But...
Yeah, I'll copy and paste it. Before I do that, though, if anyone, please indicate if you're an empathy circle facilitator, because we're kind of short on them. So one group, I might have to just throw people in there. All right, so here is the question. So option 1, how does the Stoa and or empathy circle modality currently serve you, and how do you think it can serve the world, or whatever is alive for you? And let's say if you go with option 1 and after the first kind of cycle, you don't have to stay with that. You can just kind of talk about pivot to option 2, whatever is most alive for you. So is that?
Yeah, I think that's it. Again, we have 5 minutes for facilitators, 5-minute turns. They'll hold up the sign when your time is up. And let me just check if there's anything else I'm forgetting. Yeah, oh, and when you come into your circle as facilitator, just ask everyone their name, where they're from. Just go do a quick round just to hear where everyone is, their name and where they're from, and then go right into the circle. And as the facilitator, they can be the first listeners, just to sort of model the listening too. So someone who's not a facilitator can speak to the facilitator, they'll reflect back, model the practice, and then speak to select someone else when it's their turn. So I think we're all set. So we can press into the rooms. And
so I'm just, give me one moment, hang tight. I'm just doing navigating. Yeah,
sorting takes a bit of work to create all those rooms and get everybody into the rooms.
Yeah, so we'll listen to some sensitive music for
or we can ask some questions, any quick questions.
Okay.
Got any questions about the process, comments, or I'm not seeing everyone on my screen, so just blurt it out if you have a question.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll throw people in. All right.
All right, see you in the breakout rooms.
Hi.
Great, welcome to the. So hopefully the instructions were clear enough, or you saw the previous introductions we had more extensive. I was trying to shorten it. So we can just start, like your name and where you're located. I'm Edwin Rutch. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. Anyone else want to go?
Yeah. I'm Seth Gentle. I'm in Melbourne in Australia.
Wow.
I'm David Jacobs. I'm in Sacramento, California.
Nice. Oh, I'm gonna get pulled out.
And I'm Susan, and I'm in Oakland, California.
Oh, great. Yeah, right nearby. So we can get started. Who would? I'll keep time. Let me bring up the clock.
I've got a message saying the breakout room is going to close in 38 seconds.
Yeah, I have the same message on my screen. That's
okay, we'll probably be heading back. Maybe he hit the wrong button. I've done that before too. So we'll see you back in the breakout in the full group, and then I'm sure get us back into the full.
All right. Welcome to the Stoa, everyone. I'm Peter Limberg, the steward of the Stoa. So a bunch of people joined, and I'm like, oh shit, there's not enough room. And then I had a timer on. So we'll listen to sensitive music for maybe give me a minute, and then I'll put you in breakout rooms.
Your love is made of gold. Your love is rock and roll. Your love is your love will never lie. Whatever we survive, all in our life. And you can't hide all you want, but it doesn't change a single little thing. And you can cry till your eyes fall. Still we will sing it out. Down, 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 down. Oh,
All right, just give me a couple more. This is like doing a math equation right here. I'm just trying to get everyone right room. There's one person that, what do you suggest with that?
It doesn't have to be the same in each group. You can add them to another group.
I mean, there's groups of 5 each. Each one has a facilitator, and there's one person like missing out.
Oh, do you want to make it 6 in a group? It's fine.
Is that cool?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's
Put it in
quite
your group.
short to divide this. That's, yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
There's a lot of like private requests going on, and then like video requests. I'm just trying
Yeah,
to
it's too
navigate all this.
much, right? You got to, ideally, you would be able to just say, everybody go into the room, everybody's familiar with the process, but sorting it with
Yeah.
a facilitator, yeah, adds a challenge.
All right, so each room has 5 people. One has 6, and all right,
Okay.
probably
great,
messed it up,
thanks.
but opportunity.
Right. See that, yep. Okay, great. So, hey, Evan, we're in the group again together. Last 3. So maybe we can do a quick check-in, your name, where you're located, and I'm Edwin Rutch from the San Francisco Bay Area. Evan, you want to?
I'm Evan. I'm located in Michigan, and the universe seems to want me to be in the room with Edwin.
Likewise. Harry?
My name is Harry, and I am from Los Angeles.
Welcome. Ryan?
Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
And Natasha? Pronouncing it, how am
Hi there, I'm Natasha and I'm in British Columbia, Canada.
Oh, great. Welcome. Ben?
I'm Ben. I'm speaking from Scotland, Edinburgh in Scotland in the UK.
Okay, welcome. So we can get started. We have 5-minute turns. If someone would like to speak to me first, and then I'll just sort of model the empathic reflection and take it away.
I have a question.
I have a timer here too. Yes, you have a question?
Specific subject. I had to walk away for a few minutes and I didn't catch that. Is there a theme?
Okay. Yeah, let me put it in here into the chat. So the theme is, how does the Stoa and/or empathy circle modality currently serve you, and how do you think it can serve the world and/or whatever's alive for you? And since you were speaking, I will reflect back if you want to be the first speaker. So I'm hearing that you stepped away and you weren't sure what the question was. So you're just sort of asking the question. Is there more?
Yeah, okay. Thanks for putting me on the spot to start. And I'm just kind of scanning the question as I'm gathering myself to try to answer. And centering myself as well, because it's been a bit frazzling with my kids. So now I have to focus with you guys into the group. So I'll just pause here.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is you feel a bit frazzled with your kids and you're coming back to it. You're sort of just trying to center yourself and sort of kind of think into the question and feel a bit grounded.
Exactly. Yeah, thanks. So to go into the actual question, for me, it's one of my developmental challenges right now. It's like an edge to meet strange people. And even though I have a faith in the people that come here, that everyone is here with goodwill, I still get quite nervous to be vulnerable and expose myself and to be honest and to be communicate that, because often I find that my voice gets restricted when I get nervous. So I like to come into these groups and push myself and just make myself do things that are a little bit scary.
Okay, so I'm hearing that it's a bit of a challenge. It's a bit scary to be in a group with new people. So you're sort of on that edge, but you like to push yourself to be at that edge of, your comfort level with people that you don't know. And you're even noticing that your voice gets, changes a bit when you have that anxiety.
Yeah, like the anxiety can get super intense. And it's more on big group calls, which I consider it public speaking, and where my heart really beats super fast. And I literally lose function of my prefrontal cortex and I kind of flatline. So these groups are smaller, so they're just the perfect opportunity to kind of jump in and get a little exposure to that, but not get thrown into the deep end right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. So kind of larger groups, you just notice that you really get nervous and your heart starts racing faster and your brain kind of freezes up. So these smaller groups are actually more, sounds like you like these smaller groups better. It's kind of like a good number here.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's really important for us all over the world to go beyond our edges now. And I think part of being leaderful is a good word. I think when we can all begin to express ourselves to each other and kind of be generative towards each other, I think that's what's really driving me and the inspiration for me to want to grow beyond the small me.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is we need to be more leaderful, which means is to engage with each other. And that's sort of that drive or that vision or that value is what's bringing you to this, to engage in here in this group.
Thank you. You're doing great.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Really appreciate you think I'm doing great with my listening.
Yeah, and I enjoy watching you facilitate this because it's really nice to observe someone who's really skillful at this.
Yeah, so you really like watching this because you feel that I'm skilled at facilitating this, so you're enjoying kind of observing it.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be my story when I come into these groups that I'm constantly reiterating the same thing, like, oh, I'm scared to talk to people, I'm nervous. So I'm just want to let that go and start expressing myself more freely.
Oh, so it sounds like you've been saying that in other groups too, sharing your anxiety and your fear, and you're kind of like, oh, I want to move past that. I want to start sharing, not just sharing my anxiety, but share other things too, other aspects too. So move on.
Yeah, and just as you're reflecting, I'm starting to feel the energy is kind of starting to move a bit, like the tension is starting to rise up, and I'm feeling the breath, and I'm feeling a bit more expanded in my chest.
Yeah, so you're noticing just being heard, you're kind of feeling more grounded, you're feeling more expanded in your chest, taking deeper breath, kind of relaxing a little bit.
Yes.
And that's the time.
Thank you.
Speak to Evan.
Listening.
Yeah, I really appreciate when Natasha mentioned about her anxiety, because I have that too. And I find just sharing it at the beginning to be helpful. It's like, get it out in the open, instead of it just sort of being locked up inside. I think that's a good strategy that I use too.
So I'm hearing you empathize with Natasha's experience. You have that too, that you feel the anxiety often in the beginning, and that you find it to be a good strategy, the one she took, to address it head on in the beginning and just get it out there. And yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
And in terms of public speaking, I get anxious too with public speaking. I remember even in junior high school, I had to give a public speaking report. I just couldn't do it. I just didn't do it. I got a D in the class because I just wouldn't do that public speaking. So I still remember that, so, and it's this feeling of it's like seeing everybody's eyes at me and just sort of freezing, kind of like a deer in the headlights. So it's just that it feeling is so weird. It's like, the response to fear, fight, flight, freeze. So the freeze of just, where do I go?
So I'm hearing you really deeply emphasize with the fear of public speaking that Natasha expressed during her time as speaker. And it goes back for you all the way back to middle school, where you even got a D in a class because you just couldn't. And that for you, the way that this sort of limbic hijacking manifests itself is in the freeze aspect of the fight, flight, freeze response. And it's just like you're a deer in the headlights.
And what I'm trying to cultivate is to be able to share whatever it is. Like, if I feel like a deer in the headlights, that, oh, I feel like a deer in the headlights right now. It's like, just name the experience that I'm having in the moment. And it's like, oh, I'm totally lost. I have no idea what to say. And just keep going with the honesty of what's sort of happening. So that's what I'm been trying to cultivate. And I find the empathy circle has been really good, for that. practice.
So it sounds to me, I'm hearing that you're cultivating a sort of radical honesty about what's going on internally with you, and that you find the empathy circle modality in particular to be really useful for that, because you just share exactly what's going on with you in that moment.
And what I see is that there's a response to fear, there's fight, flight, freeze. And I think that what gets missed is there's empathy is another response to fear, is you can just do exactly what Natasha was doing, is you name the fear, right? Or you just have that radical honesty, which you're talking about, just naming what's happening in the moment. And I think that's a more constructive, way forward. So that's something I'm trying to cultivate.
So I hear you proposing that empathy is also a possible response when in the throes of a fight or flight style response, and that you think that's essentially the healthier, the better response to be cultivated, and that's what you're trying to do.
And I remember once I did this freestyle dancing, it was like one of these peak experiences. I felt some anxiety in me, while I was doing the freestyle dance. And instead of just sort of ignoring it, I said, I'm going to dance into it. Like, what does it feel like? Let me open it up. And sort of, I kind of felt the metaphors of it. It felt like, thousands of little knives cutting into me. Ignore the timer. Okay. So, and I just kind of danced for like an hour. I just danced into fear. It was like this peak experience that, it's sort of, it was like dancing, empathizing into fear.
So I hear you talking about opening up and empathizing into the fear, and you're telling us a story about this experience of a freestyle dance, which it sounds like was really outside of your comfort zone at the time, and that you were able to open up and empathize into the fear, and it was a peak experience for you.
Yeah, that's my time. I feel fully heard. Thanks.
All right, so I will talk to Ryan.
Listening.
So I'm going to go back a little bit to the quote unquote prompt here about the Stoa specifically, because it's been really a wonderful thing in my life.
So I'm hearing you say you're going to return to the prompt that Peter gave us about the Stoa and how that's been meaningful for you in your life. And you're saying that it has in fact been a wonderful thing in your life.
Yep, exactly. And so, this brings to mind, so the Stoa has been such a great space for me because I've been a hermit for about 6 years, roughly, for the most part. I live with my wife and my cats and don't really do anything other than read and do my job and, live. And so the Stoa is providing this space. I didn't become a hermit because I hate people. I became a hermit because there weren't people around me that were interested in the things that I'm interested in. And now there's this wonderful space of people who are interested in those things, and I get to connect with them. So that's been really wonderful.
So for the past 6 years, I hear you've been isolated. You described yourself as a hermit, just living with your wife and your cats and your books. And you've been in that space, not because you hate people, but because you haven't found people who have been interested in the same things that you are interested or studying the same things that you're studying. And so you just go to work, you come home, but you found here in the Stoa people who are interested in some of the same things that you're interested in and get to have a dialogue with those people, which you find rewarding.
Yeah, and I mean, not just interested, because I can find people interested in the stuff that I'm interested in, but and you did a great job of listening. This isn't adding on. You reflected me perfectly, but interested and doing their own deep exploration of these things. People ask great questions on the Stoa. People are bringing contributions and angles to things that I haven't thought about. And, I go so deep into the things that I'm interested in that's been really rare for me to experience. And yet the Stoa is full of such people. And so it's just this wonderful space of interesting people with deep thoughts who are willing to put themselves out there and share them.
So I hear you talking about entering into a space with people who are asking great questions and touching upon angles that you haven't thought about that are enhancing your own understanding of problems that you're deeply curious and deeply passionate about and that are meaningful to you in your life. And you really appreciate that collective questioning about those subjects.
Precisely. And I also just wanted to add a note that say, it's really cool to get to be a part of people's personal growth process to the whatever extent that we can through a digitized environment. Like, you know, I just wanted to reflect back a little bit what Natasha was saying. Like, you're somebody who's actually stuck out to me as asking good questions and like a really good contributor to the events that I've seen you in. And so, you know, seeing people who, on the one hand, I would have never known that you were struggling with that, and seeing people growing into whatever it is that they're growing into is just deeply inspiring and awesome, and something you don't get many other places online.
So you've really enjoyed the participatory aspect of engaging with other people's growth and development, and as you continue on your own journey, and then seeing people, you mentioned Natasha and just how she has asked some wonderful questions and how you've participated in other groups with her and really appreciated seeing, and maybe I'm reading into this, but seeing her process through the questions that she's asking.
Yeah, no, I don't think you were reading into it, or if you were, that's exactly what I meant. I mean, getting to participate in each other's growth processes is part of the essence of Communitas. And that's something that Peter's trying to cultivate here on the Stoa. And I've never been in an online only space which so successfully is embodying that. Nothing's perfect, but this is damn good.
So the Stoa has been a great place for you to participate in Communitas with other individuals and in their evolution, personal and collective, in an online and digitized space. And that's been really rewarding for you.
Yeah, and so I'm just, you know, how do I feel about the Stoa and how do I feel about the empathy circle practice? I'll bring that into here. It's a microcosm and macrocosm thing. The empathy circles are a microcosm of my experience with the Stoa. So everything I've said about the Stoa so far applies equally to my experience with participating in this empathy circle series on the Stoa. And I'm very grateful for both of them.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the empathy circle and the process that takes place within the empathy circle is a microcosm of the macrocosm of what the Stoa is, and how in this space you get to explore some of the themes at a very practical or micro level that the macro level is giving. I think I got a little bit muddled there, but
no, that was right. That was it. Yeah, and so I guess you know, the other part of the prompt, if you will, was how does this go out into the world? Well, I think that we have had a dearth of fully developed humans to lead the culture forward, and this is part of what the sort of meta modern idea is calling for, is development of humans to move the culture forward. And I think that the Stoa is a place where this is happening in ways that I haven't seen it happening so intensely with such sparks and consistency in my travels. So I do think the Stoa has something meaningful to contribute to the evolution of our culture, and empathy circles as well. Again, as above, so below, micro and macro. Yeah, good stuff.
So you see the Stoa as a place in which people are developing and evolving themselves. You said there's a dearth of people who are fully evolving themselves in the world, and that the Stoa is a place where that can exist. And I saw time, so thanks so much, Evan.
Fully heard. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for letting me listen. And Ben, I see you there.
Hi, listening.
All right. So just thanks, Evan. That I'm feeling a little nervous in my body right now because this was the first time that I've been in an empathy circle, and just a little afraid that I'm not reflecting appropriately or accurately or getting all of the things that that the speaker Evan was trying to say. And so I'm just noticing that in myself.
Thanks, Ryan. Can hear you kind of checking in with yourself, feeling into yourself and noticing some nervousness, noticing maybe some fear. You said you're afraid maybe that you haven't been listening or responding appropriately or accurately to what's been said. And you also said this is the first empathy cycle that you're participating in.
Thanks, that was great, yeah. Also, I think something that I noticed myself doing well, Evan was talking was trying to be fully engaged in listening, but then also trying to think about what he was saying and how I would then reproduce it, reflect it back to him while it was happening, and how I was trying to actively kind of curtail that process and let myself just be listening to him while he was speaking, which was a really interesting dance to get to do and practice. So that was really nice, great experience.
So I hear you reflecting on the process that you're in, or the process that you've been in, and seeing the movement of that and the interaction of that. And in particular, on the one hand, kind of really wanting to be listening and wanting to be fully engaged with what's being said, but also kind of being aware of this other process, kind of thinking, how am I going to articulate, how am I going to reproduce what's been said, and sort of juggling that or handling that in the dance.
Yeah, thank you. Also, I want to say that I think when we were first starting this up and when we were in the big group with Peter speaking, and just kind of getting oriented, I was trying to think about what to say during this time period, like what is true for me, what is alive in me, and just having that anxiety that maybe Natasha was talking about. I'm not sure if that's what she was referring to, but just having an anxiety about public speaking, about getting something that's inside of me out to others, and how that there is an anxiety. Is that maybe there's some shame there, or maybe there's some, am I worthy of having others listen to me, or any number of things. Are my ideas relevant? So
there's something else that you want to say, in a sense you're kind of feeding into what wants to be said. And this is around anxiety, but you're also naming some shame and the idea, this question about whether you're worthy to be heard. And in the transition from the big group into the small group, I think some of the questions you're asking, like what's true for you, what's alive for you, and perhaps the anxiety and shame, it's like Natasha's, perhaps it's related to the public speaking situation.
Yeah, that was great, thanks. And so now I guess moving a little bit towards the question, what has the Stoa been for me, or how have I seen this empathy circle? Like Evan, I share a lot of the things that Evan was talking about. And really I have also too, in many ways, been a hermit, and siloing myself away into my own interests. And the Stoa has been a great place for me to go and ask bigger questions with other people and see how other people are thinking about these really large existential questions, whether it's through a Buddhist perspective or whether it's through the meta-modern perspective. So that's been helpful.
Yeah, so my sense is sort of now you're feeling more present and ready to engage with the question. Okay, so what's the question? Something about the Stoa. What is it doing? And you're agreeing with Evan that your experience of it has been very positive, particularly a place for questioning together around important existential topics. And I think there was something I missed.
Thanks, that was great.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Harry.
Listening.
Thanks. So I'm not sure what I'm going to say, and there's part of me also that wants to use the beginning of this time at least to begin to ask these questions. What's true for me now? What's alive for me now? And to check in with myself. My day has been a bit scattered, and I'm looking forward to finding out who I am and who I am with you here.
Mm. So what I'm hearing is that you're not really sure what you're going to be finding when you ask the question, what's alive for me? What's going on? Not even sure where you want to focus that, but kind of had a scattered day, but you're actually interested in finding whatever arises.
Yeah, thank you. And so I'm even noticing just now, hearing what I said, reflected back is happening at the same time as I feel developing a kind of a sense of clarity and a sense of openness.
Mm. What I'm hearing is that as I was reflecting that to you, it actually birthed a space for clarity and openness for you to really drop into the aliveness inside?
Yeah, so before I was preparing to say something like I'm feeling tremulous, I'm noticing some tension, I'm feeling anxious. And I think there's still an echo of that. But also I think being able to speak or having spoken in this group now, I'm already beginning to feel less tense and more exploratory.
I'm hearing you being very present to your feelings and the sensation arising within you, and where you were starting more on the anxiety side of things, it's really actually dissipating, it sounds like. And as the more you speak, there's more of a sense of presence and more of a sense of being comfortable actually being present and sharing what you are present to.
I'm really interested in enjoying hearing myself through you, or kind of encountering myself in the encounter with you. There's a strange sort of looking at myself through water that is the image that comes up.
I'm hearing that you're enjoying the process of me reflecting what I'm hearing back to you, almost as if it's a reflective piece in water, where there might be not 100% clarity, almost a difference, a slight difference, but still a depth of reflection that you're enjoying.
Because some of your words and some of your rhythms I recognize as my own, but there's also this aspect of surprise.
And a part of that is that you're seeing that we have similarities in how we relay what we're hearing and what we're feeling, but potentially there's also a difference that's new, which is bringing a surprising aspect to the forefront.
I'm just taking a moment to see what else is here for me, because my mind feels pretty uncrowded and pretty unclear. There's nothing really presenting which feels demanding to speak.
So what I'm hearing now is that you're just continuously being present to whatever arises, and the arising in this moment isn't much. And that's it feels like there's both, it feels free, but as well as a bit demanding, because it is your space and time to share.
I guess there's sort of in the distance, there's this feeling of pressure, as if perhaps there's a question I should be answering, or maybe there's something that I do need to say, or maybe there's a question I should be asking in this space. I'm kind of aware of that pressure.
So what I'm hearing now is that as you're sitting in that stillness and that silence, that you're also aware of a pressure that is coming in as to, well, it's my time to speak. So is there a question that I should be answering, that I should be asking myself, that should be there? And you're kind of sitting with that, almost the should of it is what it feels like. And it's time.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you. All right. And this is my first time doing this. Do we now go back to Natasha?
You speak to whoever you wish to. You can sort of, it's it's good to have people who haven't spoken, but it's up to you. And since Natasha was the first speaker, it would be good, to speak to her since she hasn't listened. Yeah.
Yes, I would love to be the listener, Harry.
Thank you. As I was saying, this is my first time in an empathy circle. Also, very new to the Stoa. I only knew of it 3 days ago, I think. And I sat in on the acid left bit, and I saw Evan there. And so far, I'm enjoying exploring.
All right, so you dropped into the Stoa very recently, about 3 days ago, when you hopped onto the acid left presentation discussion, and you saw Evan there, and yeah, you're ready for more.
Yeah, ready for more. There is that I feel present with a part of me that is very thirsty, that hears a calling, and it's been alive in me for quite some time at this point. But there's I guess the word used nowadays is meta. There's a part of me that wants to see more. I want to zoom out more and really get a broader understanding of the world that I am living in and partaking in.
So you're getting in touch with, even more strongly now, getting in touch with a part of you that's quite thirsty and wanting to explore and expand out into the world with your understanding so that you can gain more of a meta perspective on the things that you are paying attention to and the happenings around the world.
Yeah, the happenings around the world is really where it's centering. I rejected being human for a long time, and it's not until the last few years that I'm really being with what it means to be human and doing a lot of shadow work and really stepping into the darkness that I ran from. And as I do that, I find naturally there's a curiosity of how the heck have we come this far, and what has been birthed from the human experience that's arising from me integrating more parts of my human self.
So what I heard you say is that sorry guys, I'm having a trouble here with sound in the background, and my attention's getting split, and so sorry if I fumble this, and I really want to get it right because I'm right there with you. It's could you repeat? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I feel you right there with me, so I appreciate you voicing that. I was saying that in reflecting upon kind of what's happening in the world around me, I'm finding that in my past, up until a few years ago, I had a very big resistance to being human. And so it's as I've been doing more shadow work and more integration of my human part, the human side, I'm finding a natural wonder and curiosity to society and culture that wasn't there before.
Okay, thank you so much for repeating. So what I heard you say is that for some time in your life now, you've been resisting the human aspect of yourself. And as you were gaining more understanding and awareness of yourself through exploration, through shadow work, that this has now given you an opening into a curiosity and excitement about the humanity and culture and just how everything is connected and presenting itself to you right now.
Yeah, so as I'm in this place, there's both a deep reconnection with the primal and with the animal aspect of my nature, which I shoved down in my shadow, and in aligning with the heart and being compassionate and empathetic, but also then a big draw to people like Daniel Schmachtenberger, who's just so intelligent and sees so much. And so there's it's kind of like this harmonic convergence within me where everything's kind of coming into alignment of focus, which feels really grounding and centering.
So what you said now was that part of your shadow work, there's also this animal aspect within yourself that you're not pushing away necessarily, but that you're integrating into, and that you want to embrace that part of your humanity. But at the same time, you're attracted and want to further explore things that are like intellectually stimulating, but also empathically stimulating. And that someone like Daniel Schmachtenberger, who to you appears to be someone that really is an embodiment of those things that you yourself aspire to. So you're feeling attracted and called to explore this and pay attention to this.
Thank you for listening.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Right. Okay. Edwin, do you want to be included, or are you?
Yeah, I can be included, but you can mix it up a little bit because you spoke to me. It's nice to,
Oh,
try
right.
other people. Yeah.
Great. Okay. I'll call on Evan. Evan, would you be my active listener, please?
I am listening.
Thank you. So right now I'm feeling quite like a huge rift inside because of the current circumstances in my home, where I have 2 kids and they're like having meltdowns, and I'm in a group of what I perceive to be a group of Stoics who have their presence and their shit together. And so and I'm so this feels super important to me, the edge of my current understanding of the dynamic which is occurring here, but at the same time my family is super important to me, and I find that what I'm doing here is also in service to my family.
So I'm hearing you talk about the tension between the circumstances that you're physically embedded in right now with respect to your family and your kids are having meltdowns, being loud, and also with your desire to be present with the people in this event here on the Stoa, because this is a major growth edge for you, and that you feel that what we're doing here is not entirely separate from your family, however, that it is and somehow in service of the same goals, somewhat.
Oh yeah, thank you. That's very wonderful. Yeah, so I find it quite interesting that now in this circle opportunity that I've been put in a real testing situation, because I was literally feeling like rage inside because I was being taken away from this presence here by the demands of my kids. And yet, gosh, it's like, that's just the time when what we're working for here together and what we're practicing through needs to come alive in these moments when we're being actually tested by like the real world and the things that in our lives that we value.
So I'm hearing you again return to this concept of this rift, but also feeling that this is actually almost fortuitous in the sense that the practices that we're cultivating on the Stoa in general, and maybe in the empathy circle here in particular, are the practices that really come alive, as you put it, or that really show their worth when we're feeling the way that you're feeling with an embodied feeling of rage.
Yeah, exactly. And when I was being torn with my attention, I felt bad because I really wanted to be there for Harry, and I didn't want to give any indication that I'm not present, because I feel that that would be underservicing his effort. And I'm partly also here to encourage everyone just by my presence and by my participation.
So you felt a tension, and you felt, a tension, because your attention was split when Harry was speaking, and you felt bad about that because you want to support the work that's being done here with your presence, and you felt like you weren't giving him your full attention like you felt that was deserved in that moment.
Yes, thank you. And I feel heard up until now. Thank you. So I'll just maybe speak to the option 1 subject and to add to it, because I feel like these circles are also a great opportunity for all of us to contribute our point of view into the pool. And so my take also on the importance of these circles is that so many of us have spent countless hours consuming content. So we'll watch videos through like Rebel Wisdom or whatever, thousands of videos on YouTube, reading books. And then it's these engagements through these groups that now we're given the opportunity to practice what we've consumed. So we practice the content and we integrate the content that we've been taking in, and with the aim that I believe is so that we may integrate the content enough so that we may ourselves become generators of content. And how I see like our vision moving forward into game B is that if more of us become generators of content and less consumers of content, then essentially a whole new dynamic of content consuming and generating is going to have to arise, because no longer there's just passive content consumers. So it's like, therefore it becomes a more alive, in my future sense, a more alive engagement of like, yeah. So I'm just beginning to like get the words around this. So thanks for letting me practice those ideas here.
So yeah, forgive me if I don't capture all of your nuance. That was a big thought. But what I'm hearing at the root of your thought here is that there's a tension that you're feeling with being a passive consumer of content, no matter how wonderful it is. That we sit here and we watch these videos of YouTube, of Rebel Wisdom, and we're taking in all of this content, but there's still a sense in which people might just be consuming it. And you're seeing that these smaller things like these empathy circles are a good way for us to practice creating our own content in the vein of Game B, where we are sharing our own thoughts and perspectives as it relates to the transition to Game B, and that will provide potentially, the way you see it, it will provide a transition for the culture as we move into more creation rather than consumption.
Exactly. Thank you. I feel heard.
All right. So I'll talk to, say, Harry this time.
I am listening.
All right. So these themes that everybody's touching on are so cool and so powerful. And I think that's just really great so far. One thing I want to kind of add a specific appreciation that I have for the empathy circle modality itself, not just the Stoa, but specifically empathy circles. One thing I've found to be really valuable about them is that the more we participate in them, they help us get a sense for the size of idea or the duration of speech that somebody can hear and internalize.
What I'm hearing is that you're sharing a lot of the appreciation that's been shared thus far for the Stoa and for similar things like Rebel Wisdom, but you're now focusing in on this specific practice of empathetic listening because of it gives real time practical intake for the body and for the mind to really feel about, wait, what is the breadth and the depth of what it almost sounds like what it takes to be an empathetic listener. And it almost felt like there's an appreciation, but also a deep acknowledgement to the people who can do that.
So that's interesting because you actually anticipated what I was going to say next. So instead, I will reiterate the one part of what I said before that I didn't feel that you captured in your response, which is that it can be difficult for somebody who thinks complex thoughts to know when to stop speaking and to check in with their listener to make sure that they have been understood. And Empathy Circle is a great training for that, because I can speak for 10 minutes, all these complex ideas, and I don't know if my interlocutor got it. But the Empathy Circle practice, by saying things of varying length and then seeing how accurately those are reflected back to me, gives me amazing feedback for the sort of chunking that I should do of my ideas as I'm presenting them to people. And I'm very thankful for that.
So what I'm hearing as you're going back to a piece that I missed was that there can be a struggle for people who might have had complex thoughts, very intellectual, who might have run through a scenario several times to themselves, but then this practice gives them the ability to truly have that in connection and communication with another human being, and to see the response of that person listening and reflecting also gives you feedback to, okay, how much did this come across in varying lengths, whether it's a short or a long share, and however nuanced the share was, to really see, okay, am I being understood? Also, it sounds like reflecting back, am I communicating effectively in that moment?
Precisely, yeah. And so, like, I have this conversational tick, you might call it, where I very frequently ask people that I'm talking to, does that make sense? Or did that make sense? And that can sometimes come across as weird to other people, or as, I don't intend it this way at all, but can come across as somewhat condescending. And so I really love the structure given by the empathy circle because it has that built in. I don't have to ask, did you understand that? Did that make sense? Which somehow presumes it puts me on like a socially higher level in some people's minds, or like I'm pulling a status move. Not at all, right? That's not the intent. But in a structure like this, that's built into the structure of the practice, and it just flows naturally. It's what we're doing here. And so I just really love how that works for getting feedback on how what I'm saying is being understood.
And what I'm hearing in deeper appreciation for the practice is that something that you've done in your past is check in with people that you're talking to. Hey, does that make sense? Are you tracking potentially? Which can create almost an awkward moment, and even a moment of potentially being perceived as arrogant or whatever it is that might be perceived as a distancer, when really you're just trying to check in with the other person. Hey, are we tracking? Are we on the same page here? But this practice does that for you. It offers that space. It gives you the check-in, and it already builds that in. So you know, hey, am I tracking with this person? Are we on the same page? Are we connecting on a deeper level right now?
Precisely. And the other aspect of this practice I just want to speak to, as long as I'm speaking, is that I love the fact that you have to get into a space as the active listener where you are not coming up with your response as the other person is speaking. And so much of the way that we converse, especially those of us with a more intellectual bent who may have participated in debate or just naturally gravitate towards that way of interaction, it's a totally different way of embodying the act of listening, is to just listen and reflect and have no thought as to what your response is, other than just to reflect what the person said.
So recognizing the time, but what I am hearing is that another appreciation you have for this practice is that it brings people into presence, it brings people into active listening, and it sounds like it brings people out of listening to respond, but really listening to hear and dropping into actually being present to the other person so they can be heard, they can be seen, and it creates a deeper level, it feels like, sense of presence and connection between you and the other person.
I feel fully heard.
All right. Edwin, I'd love for you to listen.
Listening?
I want to pick up where Evan just left off, because I too feel that. And again, this is my first time, but I'm already picking up a sense of people genuinely listening to hear and not listening to speak or respond or prove me wrong or right, whatever it is. It's just simply being present with the words that I am speaking.
So you want to build on what Evan was saying, noticing that when you're listening, you're just listening to hear, not to sort of respond and to think about other things, but just sort of the dynamics of the listening. You're just reiterating, building on that.
And I've found in my own life, up until I learned similar techniques, I was totally that person. I was totally, especially if it was in some sort of conflict, it was, how can I make sure that I don't lose, or, whatever part of me was coming up to respond, to defend, would totally cut me off from actually hearing what might be being said that could be helpful to me.
So you're really noticing how you used to be, where you would listen to really respond, and especially if it was in a conflict, kind of prepare to respond, and noticing that would sort of cut you off from maybe a deeper connection. And so you're just noticing that that's how you've been more, it sounds like you're learning kind of more of these listening practices now.
Yes, absolutely. Now I'm feeling the desire to totally change pages and just kind of drop it into my body. And I'm recognizing activation in my heart center and my chest. And it's both, feels like a stimulus that's both holds love, but also a bit of fear in it.
So I'm hearing that you're shifting sort of your awareness in your body, maybe from more of a thought process to more of a felt into your heart area. And you're noticing in there's a feeling of love as well as anxiety in that area.
And if I really trace it, I can feel it just in my hips, coming up my spine into my heart, and then it comes up and it's really strong in my jaw. I hold a lot of tension in my jaw, and if I sit with it, it doesn't necessarily dissipate, but it drops me into being present to this moment and really learning to accept the moment as it is, not becoming present so that I can stop feeling something, but becoming present to whatever the feeling is, has been a really profound practice that I've come to gain value from.
So you're noticing the tension in your body, that it moves up from your legs, up your body and into your jaw, and just sort of sensing that tension, and also noticing that being more aware of your body sensations, that it doesn't necessarily get rid of the feelings that come up, the tension, but maybe gives more space around it and more just presence with it. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I'm just, my energy is shifting so fast. Now I'm feeling goofy and light and just like, so it feels just really good to be truly present to whichever way the energy shifts. And it totally is right now. And so I'm kind of having this release of being so appreciative for, I mean, just this practice alone, but really for what I was talking about earlier of finding new perspectives, new thought processes, new practices, implementing them and seeing, is this something I'm going to adopt or just, let go of? Is this going to be a tool that I drop into, or something that was just I'm glad I learned that along the way.
Yeah, so you're just sensing into your body and noticing sort of a goofiness, kind of a bit of playfulness, weaving, feeling, and sort of an appreciation for these practices, and aware that maybe you'll use this, maybe you won't, but you've been learning a lot of different practices and you'll see what works and what doesn't for you. And really being aware of what's happening in your body and sensitive to your bodily sensations.
Yes, practices as well as concepts, as well as perspectives. Just really kind of on all levels, is this something that I can adopt? And if I do adopt it, where's the alignment? Is it way over here? And how do I integrate that in? And so it's, it's on multiple levels. It's in my physical body, it's in my mind, it's in the deeper aspects of being.
Okay, that was the time, but just to wrap that up. So I'm hearing it's not just bodily sensations, it's integrating all the different aspects of yourself, your thoughts, your mind, the body, and sort of bring it all into sort of an integration and maybe even a centering. It's
Yes, I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay, great. Brian, can I speak to you?
Listening.
Wow, there's so many different topics coming up. But maybe I'll start with, I had made some notes here about the Stoa, that I do want to share my appreciation for the Stoa and Peter and the work that he's done setting all this up, because it's been a place that's been sort of open to the empathy circle work. There's not a lot of places kind of open in society for it. So I really appreciate that openness and that resonance that it has.
So what I'm hearing you say is that there are a lot of different directions that you could go in right now, but you just want to take this moment right here to talk about the Stoa and thank the Stoa and Peter for his stewardship of a space that can include your work with the empathy circles, and just thankful that it has a home here.
Yeah, and the other was the anxiety. It's that bodily sensation. I think that's a step in terms of deepening the empathy circle, is to be speaking more from bodily sensations and being able to identify feelings and in myself and others. So that is sort of an aspect of going deeper that I would like to get better at and incorporate more into the empathy circle.
So there's a part of the work with the empathy circle. You mentioned first anxiety, and then you started talking about just the bodily sensations that anxiety shows up as within you, and how you would like to get better at speaking from a place that acknowledges those sensations.
And it's like all the sensations. And I'm just thinking what was just mentioned about wanting to integrate so the feelings and the thoughts. That's the thing with the empathy circle. It's like whatever's alive for you, you can share. You can share. Like when it's my turn, I can be judgmental. I can be nasty. I can do whatever I want, you know, and I'll just get heard. That's why it's really good for mediation, because people have all these pent up frustrations. They can vent it and be heard, and then they kind of like move beyond that, you know. So
I hear you talking about just there's a freedom that you can have within these circles to express how you'd like to express, but that in that expression, you'd like to integrate your thoughts and your body also, whether that comes through as being judgmental or harsh or critical or joyous or silly, however that represents itself. The empathy circle is a place where those things can happen.
yeah, you don't have to be politically correct, right? I can say whatever I want, and I don't have to worry if it's going to hurt you or if you're going to be hurt by it, right? It's like it's not a safe space; it's safe enough, basically. So, yeah. So
you're saying that here you can say anything you want. You don't have to be politically correct, and you don't have to worry how it's going to be taken in that space. It's not a safe space, you said, but it's safe enough. And you also said in your last talk that's why it's a good place for mediation.
Yeah, it's because people can really just express themselves and their frustration. I find that when people vent, you know, they're all pent up, they got all these frustrations, and I just listen to them, or they get heard in the circle. Just being heard, the stress level goes down, and then we start getting past that and start getting to more kind of the real issue. So that's, yeah, just one of the big benefits. And I guess there's another part of it too, is what's happening politically, like with political correctness and all this. It's like, you know, shutting people down, which I really object to, you know, is, and I don't want to shut people down for shutting people down, though. These are, so I want to be open and listen to them for why they're shutting people down. So I think it is that aspect of just sort of opening up and you know, listening to everyone that I think is really important.
So what I hear you saying about the empathy circle is that it's just a really great place to share, no matter what you're thinking, whether that's politically correct, whether it's right or wrong. There's maybe not an imposed value structure within an empathy circle, but it's really just coming from the person who's speaking. And that's one of the things you really appreciate about this space.
Yeah, I'll just say there is a value system in its structure. It's that you will listen and be reflected. So that empathy is, it's not neutral. You know, a lot of times people say, oh, this is a neutral space. It's not neutral. It's very activist empathy. It's empathy activism. It's like we're really standing up for an empathic way of being. You know.
So there's a value structure that's inherent in speaking and listening, and we're standing, and that value structure is spoken or identified through the word empathy,
yeah,
which we're trying to embody by speaking and listening to each other.
Yeah, I feel very well heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha, can I speak with you?
I'd say yes, but I want to give Ben a chance in case we run out of time. So I'll pass my turn and hopefully nominate Ben.
Sure. Ben, can I talk to you?
Yeah, I'm just observing that we, I think we did it this way around before.
Yeah,
so,
I think
I'm
you're
open.
right, yeah.
Okay, I'll be the active listener and then I'll call on Ben because I think we may have enough time. Okay, so.
Perfect, sounds great.
We still have 25 minutes. So.
Great.
Right. Yeah, so this has been really nice so far. Been really fun. I can feel myself kind of settling down from the beginning, and just coming into this space with all of you in maybe a little bit more of a stable way.
So I hear you say that you're feeling this experience is nice so far. and you're settling into the group conversation, and that you're feeling a bit more stable now since the initially at the start.
Mhm. Yeah, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about what you said, Natasha, about just content consumption and versus content creation. And it's kind of like in this, when you have dialogue with someone, you're both creating and consuming content of each other. And that's been really nice to create and consume content, which is kind of like a stupid and silly catchphrase that we all use nowadays for this fucking media torrential bullshit that is enveloping our lives.
So what I hear you say now is that you kind of referenced to what I said earlier about content consumption versus content creation, and that you gave the example of how when we're in dialogue, we're both creating and consuming content. And then you kind of had a little bit of a inner giggle about the idea of calling it consuming content. I think maybe you're a little bit unsure about the languaging because it's already taking you more into that mass media mindset of like being bombarded with media programming or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, when you use that word content, there's an immediate, I think of Instagram, or you think of like all of the dribble that comes out on YouTube that really isn't, that's asking you to buy things. That's really consumptive, and in some ways, that's what we're doing all the time when we're consuming content. I just finished watching this 4-part documentary called The Century of the Self, which blew my little mind, and kind of linked capitalism to psychological development and Freud. And so that's informing how I'm thinking about content right now.
Okay, so what I heard you say is that, again, you mentioned the word content. And again, there's a bit of an icky, sticky feeling around that word because it's so associated with just mindless content output through social media or Instagram platforms such as that, which are there basically just to engage us in consuming stuff. And that lately you watched a 4-part documentary called The Century of the Self, and you found that quite stimulating, and maybe there was some connection with Freudian something or other. I didn't remember the last part.
That was great. Yeah, you definitely hit it. I'm going to shift a little bit because I just want to remember a point during this dialogue that I really came alive. It was when Evan was talking, and he was talking about how inherent in the form of this empathy circle is a kind of a structure for, it's a feedback mechanism to tell you how much somebody else can understand with what you're talking about.
So now you just decided to shift a little bit of where you're focusing your attention, and it will be on referencing to what Evan spoke about earlier about maybe one of the benefits of these circles is that it really allows you into a space where you can practice observing the amount of dialoguing you share, and then kind of being sensitive to how much the person that is listening to you can actually absorb and empathize with in any moment.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Right. Okay, Ben, would you like to be the active listener?
I'm listening.
Okay, great. Thanks. One of my kind of questions in my mind now as I engage with empathy circling, which I've done a few of these now, is trying to just kind of understand based on some of the sharings that I've heard here, kind of that habitual relating pattern that I have, which is kind of having a mental image of what I'm going to say first and almost like speaking like as if I'm reading in my brain versus being more in a flow communication where you're really actually not sure what you're going to say. So I'm guessing that it's the latter.
So as you're engaging in the empathy cycling here, you're noticing a question, and it's something about habits, relational habits. And the question is something about kind of preparation, kind of packaging what you're going to say and saying it, as contrasted to something more like a kind of a relational flow or communicative flow. And you think maybe the latter is what you're seeing here, I think is what you said.
Oh yes, that's exactly what I said. Thank you. And again, the word flow comes up, and that's, I guess, something that I'd really like to cultivate, especially with communication, because, you know, maybe it's not, it's quite some similarities here because I definitely have a hermit tendencies myself. So I would say that my throat chakra is underdeveloped, and that's kind of the gateway of communication. And so the part of the empathy circling practice for me is just to be mindful of breathing and being very body present while I'm communicating so that that flow can have the opportunity to basically flow through my words.
So I'm hearing you kind of return to some themes that where we've been before, and this is really around what are you cultivating? What do you want to cultivate? What's being cultivated here in relation to flow? And you're relating that to yourself as well in terms of your body, your throat chakra as the kind of the site for communication. So can you cultivate flow and communication through empathy cycling? Yeah. Does that sound right?
Yes, it does. So I still feel like tension and nervousness, but now it comes to mind that partly why I feel the tension is because this is so important to me, and the subject matter that we bring into the Stoa, to me, it feels like maybe I have a faulty view of it, but it's like really the health of humanity and our planet is like hanging on the edge of all of this that we're dialoguing about here. So it almost feels like existential to me, like maybe why I'm so physically engaged is because somehow I have a weird cross link in my brain and have really almost hanging my identity and the existence of my identity on the successful outcome of what happens here.
So I hear you linking at least what's going on for you quite locally and what's going on in this group and the Stoa in relation to the bigger picture with the planet and humanity. So you're checking in with yourself and saying, well, I'm feeling some tension, some nervousness. What might that be about? Maybe it's because something's important. And what is that? Well, ultimately, it's because existential risk is around the future of humanity and the planet. And how is that outcome related to what we're doing in empathy cycling?
Yes, wonderful. And so also I find that the engagement through empathy circling can be quite physically tiresome. Like I'm not used to having to almost like work certain muscles of my being or of my brain that I have to start enacting here in order to really do well with this mode of communication of listening and empathizing. So I'm noticing that I'm really weak in those muscles. So therefore, going through several rounds of this is actually quite fatiguing for me.
So you're always noticing some fatigue, some exhaustion, some tiredness around kind of a weakness because there's something which isn't usual for you, this kind of listening. Not sure what else you said in relation to listening, but that what we're doing here requires something different for you than you would normally be practicing in this sustained way.
Yes, thanks so much.
Thanks. I would like to speak with Evan. Will you be my active listener?
I am actively listening.
Thank you. So I think I had a plan already, and it was something like this. I'd like to use this space to see if I can. I've been in empathy circling a couple of times. Maybe I've seen one, and this is the second one that I've participated in. So I wonder, can I do something like see what I experience in them so far and what I observe in them so far? And maybe if I get through that, maybe there'll be some ideas that I can turn to as well about what it might be.
So I hear you saying you had a bit of a plan for this opportunity that you have to speak, and that you've seen an empathy circle. This is your second one you're participating in, and you're interested in exploring what's coming up for you at the feeling level, and then that might take you somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'm aware that, we'll have my own kind of preconceptions about what empathy circling is and what it's doing. And I'm aware that, I have quite a lot of curiosity and kind of receptivity to actually engage in a kind of exploratory way with what this might be. So I'm hesitant to start looking at my experience, knowing that I'm bringing a lot of stuff with me.
So I'm hearing you say that there's a hesitation rising for you when you take this tack with what you want to say, because there's a lot of context surrounding this for you, like lived context. And so you're not sure about how that relates to what you're going to say now and if you can communicate it successfully.
Yeah, that's right. So I think, some of the things that I've been seeing in the little bit of empathy cycling that have done is a sort of a cultivation or a kind of normalizing of a kind of a listening, a kind of a receptivity and openness, and a kind of a mirroring in speech, between people.
So you're talking about how the empathy circling for you has to do with a sense of openness and receptivity, how you find it to involve mirroring with respect to speech.
Yeah, and so in the way that I've been participating as well, both sides of it, there's listening both sides. So when I'm speaking, I feel as if there really is a space for me to listen to myself and to be able to get clear about what it is that I'm wanting to say. But on the other side of it, when I'm listening, there's also a kind of a listening to what the other person is saying. So there's listening on both sides somehow.
So I'm hearing you say that for you, this practice cultivates a certain emphasis on listening, both when you're in the active speaker and active listener roles, and that the speaker role gives you an invitation to a space where you can also listen to yourself. And then, of course, the active listening role is also all about listening. So you're finding listening on both sides of the coin.
Yeah, and then I'm just remembering what Edwin was talking about, the level of sensation and the level of feeling. And I guess that the listening that I'm talking about would kind of encompass those layers as well. So kind of sensing and feeling into what it is that I'm saying or what it is that the other person is saying.
So I'm hearing you say that it's coming up for you that the listening is not just an intellectual kind of listening, but that it has to do with what Edwin was saying, and you're listening to what's coming up for you at the level of sensation and emotion and in your body, as well as listening to the semantic content of the words.
Yeah, and what I'm intrigued by, but what I'm like not quite in touch with, is something like a kind of the social rhythm or the social patterns. So like I feel like what I must have been doing over the last hour is in turn seeing people kind of find this kind of resonance or find this oscillation or find this kind of mirroring and becoming very, very used to kind of seeing this quite extraordinary way of relating.
So I'm hearing you say that something that's on the edge for you with this practice is observing the the way in which over time we're coming into a sort of resonance or harmony with ourselves and with our roles in this practice, and that's sort of something that you started out by saying you didn't feel like you fully had a handle on, perhaps.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
All right, Natasha, may I speak to you?
Yes, I'm listening.
So somebody, and I'm bad at placing things in the exact point in the time stream, but somebody earlier said, I think it was you actually, said something about how normally they speak almost as if like reading from a plan or a script in their mind, and that this practice seems to be cultivating a different way of speaking or a different place that you're speaking from.
So I heard you just reference something I spoke about earlier, which is noticing how we may have the habit of speaking as if we're reading from a script in our mind rather than being in the flow of the experience of the communication.
Exactly. And so I wanted to share something that I don't know if this is actionable for other people, but something that I've gotten out of this practice and other practices like it. I've been told I'm a pretty good active listener, and I very much don't keep track of the words that people say. I feel what people say, and then I speak back to them from that embodied feeling tone. And so I think it's interesting that you notice that on the speaking side, because for me, that's very much an aspect of the listening side as well, and part of what the practice here can cultivate.
Okay, so I just heard you make a very interesting correlation between embodied listening and embodied speaking, and how for yourself you find that you're a very good listener, and people even have commented that they have experienced you as being a very good listener. So you just wanted to point out that there is a correlation between being an embodied speaker and listener.
Yeah, exactly. And I see we have 60 seconds left, so I'm just going to add in one other thing. You were also talking earlier about the struggle where we care about the outcomes here so much, and I just wanted to. There's a story, or there's a thing in Zen and the Art of Archery where he talks about the difference. It's a different action to try to hit the target versus to fully embody shooting the arrow perfectly. And so if in the moment you're shooting the arrow as well as you possibly can, without any attachment to hitting the target, that's actually the most effective way to hit target.
Awesome. I'm not going to even repeat that, but I fully got it. And it's a wonderful quote to end it with. So in our last 10 seconds, just say thank you so much to everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks everyone. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
So I'll take in Edwin. Edwin, do you want to lead the debrief?
Okay, sure. Is everyone back? I think, let's see.
Yep, most are back.
Put the chat window in. So while we're going to do a bit of a debrief, I'm putting those links in again, just so you'll have those accessible for the how-to as well as for the training. So we want to do a bit of a debrief here. You can take 30 seconds or so just to share, how was that experience? Any learnings you had or any insights, or if you just want to go around and share those. If you want to hold up your hand, let's see, I guess
I'll just
see everybody.
Jump in one moment. For those of you who came in later, didn't do this yet, here's the spreadsheet for attendance. Just put your name if this is your first session, Empathy Circle session, or if you've been here previous weeks, just put like an X beside the date. Because again, if you attend 3 of these, 3 out of 4, then you're eligible. You get a certificate and you're eligible to go forward with Empathy Circle training with Edwin.
Actually a quicker method I like to do is just go down and just choose people if that works. And you can just sort of pass. And so you get like 30 seconds and I'll just go down the screen here. Miles, would you like to go? Say anything, 30 seconds about your experience, any learnings? Nope, pass. Or okay, David Jacobs, you're muted. Okay, if you get that figured out. Christian, are people able to unmute by themselves?
Now they are.
Okay, I'll go now because you asked for me. Yeah, I had a little trouble with the mute button. I'm glad it was a technological problem and not me, because during this exercise, I had a lot of, there's something wrong with me, because I was doing blackout. I was doing not able to listen and wondering, where the heck am I and why can't I stay focused? So this exercise is really great for making me aware of how I might get insights into listening better. And I need to just learn and practice doing this. So I'm really grateful for it. That's what I wanted to do in feedback.
Thank you. Yeah, practice. Christian?
Yeah, sure. I will go ahead and say that as we went on deeper and deeper into the circle, I was using my turn to speak on other people's perspectives, and I feel that I'm developing a shared resonance with the circle, and I hope to generate that throughout the experiences moving forward.
Okay, thanks. Maureen?
Yes, as facilitator, it was a very joyous experience. And I must say, I love Stoa. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a lot of appreciation in our group for Stoa. Antonio, man?
Yeah, I definitely had to put your listening, close your mouth and put your listening cap on. I had a more of a methodological question, which was I was writing down notes so that I could reflect back to the person accurately. And I was just wondering, how much does that actually affect how much that you're actually listening to them? On the other hand, yeah, I think you also have to really, I personally would have to develop my memory to reflect back well, which is why I was taking notes.
It depends. Each person is different. Some people like to write things down, others don't, and it's sort of a gotta kind of feel into it, what sort of works in practice. Yeah.
There's just a memory technique I kind of use for that, because I like to memorize to increase how much I can hold in. When someone says something that's distinct, I kind of have an image and I put it on top of my head. And then if they say something else, I kind of put it on my forehead, I put it on my eyes, my nose, kind of each body part, and then make the image like cartoonish. So if there's like two people giving a high five in the head or something, if they first talk about that, and then you can just recall it. Dale Carnegie teaches stuff like this, and it works.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yeah, so that was like could be a whole topic in itself. How do you remember? So I just put that in. What topics would you like for the next Empathy Cafe? Peter and I keep going back around that. So feel free to post that while we're listening to others. Kelly Mayers? Are you able to unmute?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in our group, we had like a extended few minutes because we thought we were out of time early. So we reflected. And one thing that came up was maybe we seem to have different ideas about what empathy is, how it relates to this practice, how it compares to like compassion versus empathy. My thinking was like that empathy, just always being empathetic, is not necessarily like the most beneficial thing, and maybe compassion is more suitable but people in our group didn't have the same view of what those words meant. So I think what was most resonant for me, and maybe my group agreed with, was like in the model of a mother, like I would say the mother with a crying child, like doesn't want to be overcome with the emotions of the child, but rather wants to be holding the space and acting with wisdom to care for the child. And so I'm thinking about what the words to use for those different things are, and I don't know where empathy falls into that.
Oh, great. Well, that sounds like a topic for an Empathy Cafe, the relationship of empathy and compassion. So thank you for that. Zaneb, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it, not seeing the pronunciation at the end.
I had a similar experience like David to some extent. I find it to be a muscle, the empathy or the deep listening muscle, which I am not particularly good at, and which is one of the reasons I am participating in this. And it's really interesting to me that when I first started, I found myself exhausted and drained. At the end of feel more energized. So either the muscle is getting stronger or something is happening. And for me as a personally, it was a great thing to experience and feel.
Great, thank you. Susan, yes.
Yeah, I agree with what Zainab just said. I feel like I need more empathy. I want to develop that muscle. I want to, and, get the tools right. And over the last the last two sessions, I have begun applying this to difficult relationships in my family. So I noticed that I've really come a long way, and just am making myself repeat what they say uh, before I go on with the discussion. But I'm trying not to do it in such a way that that it becomes like I'm mocking them, or um, you know maybe even sounding insincere, um, but rather just saying back the words that they're saying, maybe in a little bit different way, maybe paraphrasing. But I feel like this is just an absolute great thing to practice that.
Yeah, it's great for families. Actually, on Fridays, we're starting an empathy cafe on Fridays, which you can go to the empathyscircle.com link. You'll find links there somewhere. It'll be an empathy cafe on how do we foster empathy, a culture of empathy in the families, and bring empathy circles into the families. So yeah, that's great. Natasha?
Yeah, hi. I find the empathy circles, I'm really being put to my edge of my comfort zone. So it's really allowing me the opportunity to notice blockages within me that impede my communication. So it's just a wonderful place to be here and practice and strengthening that muscle, because it is quite fatiguing. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks. Karen Wilkins?
Hi, yes. Yeah, I think in this circle, more than any other that I've experienced, I realized how much my mood coming into this really affected my listening ability, and maybe the time of day as well, possibly. But yeah, certain things had happened yesterday that has kind of threw me off balance, and that really kind of affected my listening skills. And the other thing that I thought was quite interesting was that a few of us in the group talked about not feeling that we're very empathetic people. And I was reflecting on this idea of the definition of empathy perhaps being one in which the expectations of ourselves is greater than, maybe we are actually empathetic, but we have this kind of definition that we're trying to aspire to, that I don't know whether it's always as accurate as it could be, perhaps. So it's just something that was interesting to reflect on. Very enjoyable anyway. I was glad to be here, and thank you to my group for holding that space for my stuff. So thank you.
Thanks. Alex De Carvalho?
Yeah, so one of the things we talked about is how it's important to show up in the world with the heart, but not to leave the mind behind. So, keep your mind as you show up in the world with more heart. Keep a balance between the two. And also the feeling that there's kind of a morphic resonance that happens at the Stoa over time, and that we go out into the world wiser and more empathetic and help to change the world as a result.
Thanks. Harry Sherwood?
I feel just more connected. I feel listened to, and I think it's a really powerful practice. I also noticed at the very end, recognizing that I actually also appreciate people not just reflecting back what they hear, but if I have brought up a topic, I love hearing their thoughts on where I sit, because I really value wider perspective. So I also noticed that with empathetic listening, I also like a bit of mental gymnastics between people so that I can come out with a broader understanding.
Thanks. Robert Hart?
I really enjoyed the way that our group spontaneously decided to hold the same thread. The first person started with something that was just alive for them, and then we continued to stay on like whatever that inspired for the next person. And we really just didn't break that, even though there was no rule about it. But what it led to was like a deepening of that whole conversation. It just spiraled down inward. And so we came to a point where everyone was understanding themselves and their own stories, but also in relationship to each other. So it felt like a good bonding experience. I found that was really powerful and worthy of sharing it.
Okay, thank you. Cody Taft?
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. I was in that group, and that's challenge at the edge of it, and you bring up that, man, it's hard work. But there was this beautiful thread and opening as everyone kind of understood the work and was willing to do it, and so many insights into each other and my personal self. That it's just invaluable work. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura Hendricks.
I really enjoyed the process in our group. I noticed that for me, it was a challenge because I was resonating with when it wasn't my turn to participate in the dyad. It was a challenge for me because I was resonating and I wanted to participate, and so the challenge for me was to stay present to the process, even though I wanted to get into my analyzing mind, or I wanted to go into my own story, or into my own process, but to really bring myself back to that quality of presence to serve the group process, because that's part of my practice, is just to sort of stay with a quality of presence that would support the energy of the group. And so what I felt like I got from it was that even though that I still felt like I was resonating from the group, was then I would hear people say something and I go, oh wow, I would still get these little nuggets of wisdom that would kind of come back, that I mean, when nobody was analyzing anybody else's process, it was just simple reflection, and people were coming up with their own self-awareness and pulling out their own nuggets or whatever. But anyway, I guess the point for me was that it was that continuing to contribute to the energy of the group by bringing myself back to awareness and presence to support the group process. And that was a bit of an energetic challenge for me. So,
Well, thank
anyway,
you.
It was great. Thank you.
Shoshana?
Oh, yeah, so I just appreciate so much this process. This is only my second time, and it was interesting in our group. We are aware that there are at least 3 professional listeners in our group, and I know that I confess that I find myself as a professional listener often just waiting for the person to stop talking because I'm so excited to give them the solution to their problem. And the empathy circle is really, to me, the opposite of that. And I've really been reflecting on it since my first empathy circle last week. I just have a very deep desire to become a really good active listener and to be able to reflect instead of trying to fix. And I just so appreciate the space that gives me the freedom to realize things about myself that in my life, I don't have that ability to see it. I'm just running and talking too fast. So I'm just very grateful for the space. Thank you so much for providing this for us.
Thank you. Ryan?
Yeah, thanks so much for holding this space. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Edwin. Yeah, this was my first empathy circle. And I wanted to just say something that one of the people in our group brought up was just that the inherent in a structure is a sense making. And it is a feedback mechanism to understand how much of what we say can be metabolized by others. So that was a really great point that lit me up. And the other thing was that I wanted to add was maybe in the lingo of Schmachtenberger, is that in the empathy circle, there's an anti-rivalrous dynamics that are set up. So no one is winning, no one's losing. We're just listening, speaking, and reflecting that. So that was great. So thanks.
Thank you. Peter, I just want to check in terms of time. We're almost there. Can we go a little bit longer if people are like,
sure.
Time?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have a hard stop, but if,
yeah, we're not going to get through to everyone, but we'll go as far as we can. Just let me know on time. Ben?
Yeah, thanks. Found it to be very kind of simple, very deep practice. Noticed a lot of people using this word resonance. For me, it was kind of, there was a lot of musicality, rhythmicity. The image for me, a circle is quite empty. This seemed a lot more patterned, a lot more rhythmic than a circle. And I think a lot of us were speaking in our small group about this felt sense of cultivating, of strengthening, even this exhaustion or this effort, this tiredness that accompanied this practice, and really having it available for those moments when there's less, it seems like there's less choice or options available, and to put this into practice. a lot of appreciation. Thank you.
Okay, Seth, gentle.
Yeah, I feel kind of frustrated. There was like a lot of intellectualism in our group, and I was really enjoying it. And there was this invitation to kind of like, like have a heated, like lots of people wanted to have more heated conversation, or were talking about wanting more of that in general. And there was a part of me that resonated with the other people in my group in that. And obviously we were doing empathy circles, so we didn't have it out. And there's a part of me that really wants to. So I'm holding that.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. I guess we'll just do 2 more. Just want to keep, I know Peter had a lot going on, so I want to keep on time here as much as possible. So Ben, do you want to go?
Yeah, so I'll just say that this is my 3rd empathy circle here on Stoa, and I had a very different experience than other times. When other times there were specific times and specific people that were interesting for me to listen to, but I felt very tired. And I don't know if it was because of the group or because of something that happened outside of the group, but this one just felt very different for me. I felt much more alive and interested and curious the whole time, almost nonstop, which was surprising for me. I didn't think that was possible in this modality. I always find it very like tiring and slow down. And I'm curious for the people if they felt like the dynamics of the circles changed radically between different groups.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, each group is different. Absolutely. Evan, last person.
So hearing what everybody's saying, one thing that I keep concluding about this is, so people talk about this is like working a muscle that people don't have a lot of practice with. And I think it's interesting when you consider doing, physical therapy or retraining of like how your posture is, how you walk, how often it'll hurt worse when you're doing it quote unquote correctly at first, because you're so severely imbalanced, you've grown used to the imbalance. I think that empathy circling is in a certain sense coming back into balance with slow communication. Like this works the opposite muscles to Twitter. This is the antidote to the Twitterification of our relating with each other. And it hurts at first, it stretches at first, but I'm so grateful that you guys are cultivating the space for us to do this, because if there's one thing we need, it's a slow communication movement, sort of like slow food or what have you. And I just really appreciate that.
Oh, thanks for mentioning. I had that same experience sort of when I was first doing empathy circles. My brain would feel all kind of strange and constricted. I wasn't able to judge and respond and so forth. So it does have a physical impact. So yeah. So, okay, well, that was it. I'm sorry we can't get to the rest just because it's a large group. Thanks for sharing. I did want to check with Peter. I wanted to have a facilitator's debrief. So can we use this room or afterwards if facilitators change? Okay, great. Or I could have another, have another link. But so if you're a facilitator, stay on the call. And I just want to hear a debrief how your facilitation went. And yeah, that's it. So I put the links in there. We'll see you next week and in the training too.
So I'll make if you can hold on for 1 more minute, I'll make some closing announcements, and then Edwin, you can use this link. Just want to say congrats to Isaiah, Benjamin, Evan, Natasha, Christian, Kelly, and Susan. You're our official, I was going to say winners of the Stoa Certificate of Completion for Empathy Circles. So congrats on that. And this is sort of like part of a wider conversation here at the Stoa. For those of you who are new at the Stoa, we're doing something called Communitas Club, and we're experimenting with various different conversational intersubjective modalities to get skilled at them, because it's like they all feel like none of them is really a panacea, but they're all kind of like really honing certain skill sets. For example, we have one this Wednesday, or this Tuesday, I should say, reflective structured dialogue. That's at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And it has a kind of an empathy circle listening component, but with a dialectic on it. So I would recommend checking that out if you're interested. And yeah, the idea here is to experiment with these and kind of create our own modality here at the Stoa and give it some kind of sexy coinage. So I did this article on the anti-debate. You can read that. And the idea is to create something like that we can kind of like throw out there in the wild and get people into this type of stuff. So another event that I would plug is pretty cool. Effective Altruism. William McAskill, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's a Scottish philosopher. He's a part of the Effective Altruism movement, which is a pretty big movement, very interesting Memetic tribe. It's all about the philosophy and social movement that advocates using evidence and reasoning to determine the most effective ways to benefit others. And I was planning on getting chieftains from the Effective Altruism and Extinction Rebellion, because they're both kind of dealing with the meta crisis from different ways. So check that out. It's all on the website, the stoa.ca. You can support on Patreon. And if you'd like to keep up to date, you can go to Substack. I do daily musings, and today is going to be Keep Thy Mind in Hell. So you might not want to be onboarded in this Substack if this is your first time. So that being said, Edwin, everyone, thank you for coming out to the Stoa today.
Thanks, Peter.
And I'll